I mean, these spreads are kind of wide for divisional round. 8.5, 9.5, and then this one. Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. We're on to Sunday. It's at 3 o'clock. There'll be nothing at 1 o'clock on Sunday. There's nothing.
Nothing.
At 1 o'clock. You're going to be waiting for some football at 1 o'clock, and you got 2 more hours to wait.
Wow. Maybe that's the day I'll try and take scout skiing to that, like, snow hoop ramp
spend
thing
some time with your family
in
for
Indiana
a little bit this Sunday.
There's supposedly some, like, tubing slope that's also a ski place, which sounds terrible, but it's the closest you're going to get to skiing in the tri-state area of Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky.
Well, you enjoy. Rams at Eagles. Eagles by 6.5. Over-unders 44.5 per FanDuel. We have some snow possibilities here. 36-degree high, but 23-degree low, so somewhere in the high 20s with potential snow in Philadelphia.
Snow. I'm seeing broken clouds. That doesn't sound snowy.
Is that on that sounds like the Green Line. Is that Green Line? You on Green Line?
Yeah.
That's where Green Line gets there. Everybody's got broken clouds.
Broken clouds.
Whatever weather app they use there is a lot of broken clouds.
Yeah.
Well, if some of those clouds could break some snow out, that'd be awesome. If we get we could use a Winter Wonderland NFL game. Playoff game is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Over under 44.5. A couple defenses playing really well right now.
Yeah, well, this is the big test now of whether this Rams team has actually, taken a giant leap forward, particularly on defense, or whether they've just had a run where they've shut a bunch of teams down and haven't allowed many points. Like the last time these two teams played, it was one of those games where it was pretty close for a while, and then the Eagles, like they've had a few of these games where they tend to start incredibly slowly, which doesn't help or does help this sort of game flow dynamic. But Eagles start slowly. It's a tight game, certainly for the first half into the third quarter. And then eventually Philadelphia just leans on the team enough. Saquon breaks off a couple of big runs late. They go away, and it actually, it's like, it was a pretty comfortable win, all things considered. This was one of those games, they did it to Washington the first time around as well. But certainly from like last week, the Rams defense looks like it's playing at a different level than it was playing then. Now, does that hold when you're going up against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, Saquon Barkley? The Vikings weren't able to run the ball on them. Are the Eagles? Because if they are, that probably changes things.
Yeah, they last played right before Thanksgiving, so week 12. This was also the last loss that the Rams had when they played their starters. Their other loss was week 18 against the Seahawks. This is the last time the Rams lost, was the Eagles in week 12, like when they actually played to win. But at that time, we didn't know. The Rams already, what was their record? Little over 500, maybe. They weren't great. They were trending in the right direction, but definitely felt overmatched against this Eagles team. And then what you just described, I think the PFF run defense grade kind of sums it up. The Rams had a 41, and that was when the Eagles imposed their will.
Yeah, Saquon had like 250 yards.
Yeah, and 180 in the second half, whatever it was. And it just felt like the game flow felt right. It's like, the Eagles were a much better team. They pulled away at the end. They beat the Rams up front. As much as I love Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, and I love the youth movement there, but those are undersized, penetrating defensive tackles. They're no match for the Eagles' monster offensive line, and that all played out in Week 12. But are things different now for the Rams? Are they different? Are they, to the end of Jared Verse and Kobe Turner, all these year 1 and 2 defensive linemen? Because this Rams defense, as I mentioned the other day, for the last 3 shows, 33 points allowed in the last 4 games. Under 10 points per game over the last 4 weeks that this team has played together. Now, they haven't played great offenses, but, Minnesota's offense is pretty good this year. And they shut them down, absolutely shut them down. So it does feel like a different Rams team than when we saw them just in Week 12 at home against the Eagles.
Yeah, definitely. It does. It feels different, but I think now we get a good test of that. Like the Eagles look fantastic on both sides of the ball. Even when the offense is not cooking, it's not necessarily firing. They're a little bit like the Lions in that they can fall back on that dominant ground game, the great offensive line, Saquon Barkley, but also Jalen Hurts as a rushing threat as well. So even if, A.J. Brown is sitting there on the sideline reading a book rather than catching touchdowns, it doesn't matter. Like they're still ahead. They're still relatively comfortable. They're maybe not as explosive across the board as the Lions, but they're really imposing as an offense, and they imposed that will against the Rams the last time. So I think we've got two really good defenses. And then the question is, has the Rams defense actually taken that big a step forward since the last time they played?
And then on the other side of the ball, the Eagles offense, still inconsistent from a pass game perspective, right? Jalen Hurts has that first touchdown pass off the short field, and then much like other times this year, just kind of a dull passing attack, similar to last year. Just a dull, I don't know, tough to describe, other than it should be better, should be more explosive, right? So they scored, 2 passing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. One sits in the pocket for 7 seconds, finds Jahan Dotson in the back of the end zone. Another one on a little, quick bubble screen to Dallas Goedert, who just trucks dudes into the end zone. That's been the story this season, right? Panthers game, they only converted a couple first downs through the air. They could do so much more with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon out of the backfield. Remember early in the year how many times they're hitting him on wheel routes, and it's like, oh, man, he's also a pass game mismatch as well, especially against some of these Eagles linebackers. You get Michael Hoyt dropping into coverage, right? Find Saquon and Hoyt in that matchup. It just feels like on paper the Eagles offense should be much better than it is.
Yeah, which was kind of the same last year as well. Like it didn't ever overwhelm the way you thought it should, given the talent that they have. Now, to be fair to them, they've been banged up a lot of this year, and the number of times they've had Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Goddard on the field at the same time, along with their quarterback, is not as high as they would want it to be. That's definitely a factor, but it's the playoffs. A lot of teams are banged up. Most teams haven't had everybody they want to have at all times. It is like they have that ability, though, a little bit like old school Tennessee, to just, even when they're not playing that well, those players are so good one-on-one that they can just make plays anyway. Like against Green Bay last week, they weren't getting much going, and then they just threw a decent decision, but a play that wasn't supposed to go anywhere, really. Quick pass out to Dallas Goedert, who just stiff-armed a dude 25 yards into the end zone. Like, that's a one-on-one play, essentially, that turned nothing into a touchdown. A.J. Brown's capable of that. Saquon Barkley's capable of that. Devontae Smith, in a different way, is capable of that. Like, his savvy route running technique is capable of making those types of plays. So they've got playmakers that can do that, even if the overall scheme is not necessarily functioning that way.
Yeah, and the other matchups to highlight here, we know this Philly offensive line. They're excellent in the run game, excellent in pass protection. We debated heavily the last couple shows. Whose fault was it with Minnesota, right? And Darnold could have played better, but Cam Robinson and Brian O'Neill got absolutely wrecked at tackle.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen here. But these matchups look outstanding, though. Jared Verse, trying to go up against the Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson combination at tackle.
This, I think, is a huge thing. It's huge. It's definitely different than it was a week ago. It's like if you watch the first game between these two teams, there was that highlight play where Jared Verse kind of got a running start down the line and then just took Jordan Mailata into the air, like literally launched him in a bull rush in a way that I don't know that anybody has ever done that to Jordan Mailata. That was basically, though, the only thing that Jordan Mailata gave up in that game. Mailata effectively took Jared Verse out of this game in large part. Lane Johnson also only allowed like a couple of hurries in this game. The interior of the offensive line didn't give up much either. So as much as there was a highlight play here or there, generally speaking, the Eagles' offensive line shut down this Rams' defensive line. Now, again, this is the test, right? Have that group actually kicked on from that point, and they're better now than they were the last time these two teams played, or have they simply run up against a few offensive lines that can't do what the Eagles did? Like Minnesota's offensive line, Cam Robinson is an okay starter at left tackle. Brian O'Neill is a good right tackle, but had one of the worst games we've seen from him. Again, cause or effect. Like, did he play his worst game because these guys have become that type of force, or did he just play his worst game? And that made these guys look like they've become this kind of force. So fascinating second go-round where we get to see, is this a different unit now to go up against this Philadelphia offensive line?
Yeah, and I want to see if Hurts is, a little bit more consistent this week. 2 weeks removed from, missing a couple weeks coming off the concussion. They just have so much potential on that side of the ball. And as great as the Rams defense has played, I think the Eagles can have success, either moving the ball on the ground or winning on the outside with their receivers. Other side of the ball, Another great matchup. I mean, the Eagles' defense has been outstanding this year. They've always started with the pass rush, and our friend Joe Banner is always, he helped hire Andy Reid back in the day with the Eagles. He's an Eagles guy back in the day. Was with the Browns. I mean, he always talks about it's all about the line, defensive line, defensive line, defensive line, offensive line, right? That's how you build a team. Eagles have always believed that, but when they've made Super Bowl runs, it's when the back seven is matching that, right? When they've been weak on the back end, their D-line hasn't mattered. So I agree with the principle, build those lines, but when they're special, the Eagles, it's when they can cover on the back end, and that's them this year, right? With Quinyon Mitchell coming in, Cooper DeJean, all of those matchups now with this Rams passing attack. Can they slow down Puka Nacua?
Yeah.
Who in any, he had 180 yards or whatever against the Lions in the loss last year. Like, that dude can go off any given week. And I'll say it for the 20th straight week here. Special Matthew Stafford, when he gets hot, good luck trying to stop him. If he can show up in this game, Rams offense has a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm particularly interested in how the Eagles defense does against Nacua, because when Nacua and Stafford are on, that combination is ridiculous. Like, it hasn't always happened, but 162 yards against Buffalo, 129 against Arizona. Minnesota actually did a halfway decent job of slowing him down, only 44 yards, and he still caused problems for them. So, how does the Eagles defense attack Puka Nacua and the Rams? And then, the Rams offensive line on paper doesn't look nearly as good as its actual performance has been. It feels like a sort of similar thing to the Eagles offensive line against the Rams defensive line. Like, can that matchup actually, does Philadelphia just have enough talent to turn that into a problem for the Rams? Can they get after those guys and create some major issues, and suddenly, offensive line that has a lot of names that don't look like they should be plus players for them, can they actually force those guys into being a problem?
It does feel like the way McVay had dialed up that first touchdown to Kyren Williams, the way Kyren Williams likes to run the ball, a lot of pressure on the Eagles linebackers. We used to always say that. I still always say that about Shanahan offenses, right? Putting the linebackers on a string and everything. I think McVay, he's been pulling out some good stuff come playoff time here. And, missing Nakobe Dean now out with an injury, that's going to hurt. Oren Burks came in, played pretty well last week as far as against the Packers. Zach Bond playing at an all-pro level, but I think that the linebacker level for the Eagles is going to be key here. Slowing down Kyren Williams and, dealing with some of the play action and misdirection type of stuff that the Rams throw out there.
Yeah, and trying to slow down Stafford as well. Like, against the Vikings, his time to throw is really quick because he's just replacing. Like, he's just dropping the ball in behind the blitz. He's able to do that against zone coverage as well in a different way, right? And it's not obviously replacing the blitz, but it's just it's knowing where the spots in the zone are and just
completely different defensive style, right?
Yeah.
With this week versus last week with Fangio.
But in either way, Stafford is able to read that quickly and get the ball out fast, which is why that offensive line that features guys like, Alaric Jackson and these other players that look potentially substandard on paper are not a problem because the ball comes out so quickly.
Nolan Smith's been playing pretty well on the edge as well for the Eagles. If you remember last year's Ravens team, I like to look at depth charts at a glance and, see how guys are performing. The PFF grades on a depth chart for the Ravens last year was just all green, right? Green or better, which is good. The Eagles are that team this year where there's no real personnel weaknesses. The pass rush is solid. They've been stopping the run. Every level, players are playing pretty well. Guys like Nolan Smith making a lot of plays in recent weeks and developing. So, like, multiple years of this Eagles team building effort. Similar to the Rams, where the Rams added this youth movement and rebuilt a Super Bowl team from a couple years ago. The Eagles have had some turnover in key spots. Now, again, Dean's hurt, but Cam Jurgens, a lot of the key spots that they've needed to replace these last couple of years, they've found them, and that's why they're sitting here. And I think the Eagles, they're the 2 seed for a reason. I think we've been talking about Eagles-Lions for a while now. I think that's where it ends up. But Rams are hot, man, and they do have a chance to pull this one off.
Yeah, and because of the experience of, they've been to a Super Bowl, 1-1, Matthew Stafford at his best plays out of his mind, like, they're not intimidated by the Eagles in a way the other teams I think could be this year. Like, they know that at their best they can have that kind of game and win against Philadelphia. So I think it's fascinating because of that. Like, this is not a team that's going to be beaten before the opening kickoff. This is a team that thinks they can go into Philadelphia and win.
All right, man. Eagles by 6.5. What do you think here?
Man, I have too much faith in the Eagles versus that Rams team. I think Philadelphia is going to end up repeating what they did the first time around. It's going to be close for a long time, and then the Eagles will go away and win by more than a touchdown.
All right, this is the one where I'll take the Rams to keep it close. I'm still going to take the the Eagles to win. I think all the favorites win. Oh, man, look at that big text. I'll take the Rams. Again, Harry would probably take the favorite. He would probably go Eagles here. It's pretty predictable, 9-year-old. But I think we're going to see a good game here, and I do really hope it's snow.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.